And after I was released from prison, the Shin Bet contacted me. Again, the Shin Bet is like the Israeli FBI, the Israeli intelligence service. And I decided to go to say, sorry, guys, I'm not going to work for you. You know, I was just very young without experience, and I think this is not a good job for me. So, and keep what was in my heart in my heart. So when I was released, I was surprised in the first meeting. You know, of course, it was a scary experience for me as a Palestinian, as a son of Hamas, going to this type of meetings. People usually think that this is a meeting we go and have a cup of coffee together somewhere in a coffee shop. And that was very complicated. It was kind of kidnapping, putting me on the ground of a car, covering me. I don't want to talk a lot about how the Israeli Shin Bet meets with their agents because I'm not allowed. But I mean, it was really scary, and you find yourself finally somewhere where you have no idea where you are. And maybe it was in the neighborhood, but it took us 5 hours to get there. Anyway, in that meeting, the first meeting, I discovered that all people who were tortured in prison, they were victims. They had no relationship with the Israeli Shin Bet for a simple reason, that the Shin Bet doesn't work in networks. For example, they don't connect X and Y together and make them one cell and let them go and work together. They work only with individuals. Now, based on all the torture that happened in prison, they would torture somebody, and this somebody would confess that he had a relationship with other agents in prison, and they have been working together for the Israeli Shin Bet. So they end up all under Hamas torture, which means that none of them worked for the Israeli Shin Bet, especially that the Shin Bet didn't ask me or connect me with any other agent in prison while I was there for 16 months. So that started to make a different sense to me, and I started to think in a different way. If this was true, this means a disaster. This Hamas, it was a mini government in prison. And I was dedicating my life. My father is spending most of his life in prison for this goal. What's goal? That to establish an Islamic state. So Hamas had their chance to establish a mini state inside an Israeli prison. They had their Khalifa or their leader, and they had their council, they had their small government. And they failed big time. They end up torturing people and killing their own people who supposedly want to liberate them from occupation. So now I became very curious to know more about my people, unfortunately, from my enemies. Because I start to trust the tale or the point of view of my enemies that I wanted to kill. Just yesterday, more than even my own father. And we went through, of course, ups and downs with the Shin Bet. It wasn't an easy thing to sit down and have a cup of coffee with people who I consider them as my enemies, and I wanted to kill them all the time. And sorry, it's like, but this is the feeling and the desire of almost every Middle Eastern toward Jews and toward the Israelis, especially the Israelis in that region. And we end up friends, and we built that relationship. And whatever, they didn't brainwash me, as I was questioning everything that they said, and it made perfect sense. And a few months after, we became very good friends. And in fact, they did not ask me even to work or do anything during that time. I was just 20 years old, going to those meetings in some locations that nobody can even imagine.
And I think I remember they asked you to go to school too, right? They wanted you to go to college at that time?
Yes. The Palestinian propaganda against the Israelis that the first thing that the Israeli Shin Bet or the Israeli intelligence will ask you to go and have sex with every woman in your village or in your city and film them and use this material against them if they don't work for the Israeli Shin Bet. And the first command that they gave me, you cannot commit adultery out of marriage, no matter what. Not a Palestinian woman, not even an Israeli woman. And I would be sitting and telling me, did you pray the noon prayer? I did not pray. My Israeli enemy, who are Jews, are asking me and forcing me to go pray. And I was like, what is that? And it was exciting experience because all the propaganda, it's built on lies in the Palestinian street. And now I was in a position to learn a lot. Yes, of course, they asked me, as you mentioned, to go and study. Simply, they don't want to work with losers in the street. They want to work with intelligent, well-educated people. So I thought when my Shin Bet handler told me, okay, here's the plan. I said, wow, we're going to do some James Bond stuff now. And he told me, here is some money, and you go register in school, and you study. I was like, doesn't sound like a great plan. This is like my parents' plan. I want a different type of plan. It's like, give me a gun. I want to go shoot or do something. So that was the plan, to go to school, to study, and to learn about life, to learn about my society more, and about myself. And we did this for several years.
We were talking on the phone earlier this week, and you brought something up, and I just wanted to go back and talk about it. The danger of Islam and the difference between Islam and Muslims. I thought that was an interesting twist, and could you speak to that?
Yes. All the time I thought that the problem in Muslims or the problem in terrorists, as many people here in the United States think. And unfortunately, this is not the truth. The problem is in Islam itself. I know that what I'm saying now is politically incorrect, and many people find this offending, even Christians sometimes. But all I can say, that this is the reality, and this is the real nature of Islam. Forget about what I say about Islam, and forget about what Americans or even Muslims say about Islam. Let's say what Islam says about itself. Let's see, does the Quran mandate killing? Did Muhammad, the prophet, he's not prophet. You know why? Not because he's not prophet regarding to the Bible, because he's a prophet without prophecy. Can you believe that? Like, Muhammad claims that he's a prophet, and he died before he told his people the prophecy. Prophecy conference, huh? Prophecy conference. And we're talking about prophecies, and we know what prophecy means. And we ask any Muslim, what's the prophecy of Muhammad? They will not have an answer. And by the way, they never thought of that. They just call him a prophet. A prophet without a miracle. You know what's his miracle? He flew on a donkey from Mecca to Jerusalem in the dark, during the night. And the donkey was the only witness. We tell them, guys, usually the prophets and like Jesus Christ, he did miracles in front of thousands of people, to witness the glory of God and the great work of the Lord. But your prophet did the miracle, this great miracle of, like, imagine like a donkey taken off from LAX. Like, if there are like 5,000 people witnessing that, I would say, okay, this is a miracle. But unfortunately, in Muhammad's case, the donkey was the only witness. And so, back to the point, we ask about this prophet. Did he kill himself? Did he kill? non-Muslims or people who didn't believe in his message? The answer is yes, he killed. Did he ask his followers to kill? Yes, he did. Did he rape? Yes, he did. We're talking about a prophet, but at the same time, he's a rapist. Did he marry? Marry. It's a marriage. 9 years old child. Yes, he did. It's in the Islamic books, and every Muslim admits this fact. So, if this is the real nature of Islam, why it's controversial? Why people don't face the reality? Why Muslims are ashamed? It seems that Muslims don't know about their religion. And I tell you that Muslims really don't know about Islam. Because we have 1.5 billion Muslims in the world. 300 million of them only speak Arabic, which is the language of the Quran. And 1.2 billion don't speak even Arabic. And they just follow Islam for the idea of the one God. This is the only thing. And they believe in the lies of Muhammad. And this is why we find all this violence. And we look at most terrorist attacks, and we connect it all the time to Islam or to Muslims. And we still question, is it about those people who don't understand Islam? No, it's about Islam itself. It's in the Quran, it's mandated. Muhammad did it. And Muhammad is the highest example or model for Muslims. And you see when the Danish cartoon artist, what he did, and even 2 months ago, South Park, they made all this like big problem because there was a cartoon for Muhammad. Why is that? Because Muslims don't the rest of the world to see the real nature of Islam or the real nature of Muhammad, of their prophet. They're ashamed of that. And I think this is the time that Muslims need to face the reality. If this is the real nature of Islam, they have to be honest about it and stop giving cover to the ugly face of Islam.
You know, one of the things that is in your book, you talk about moderate Muslim, and that's kind of been the way the card that we get to pass in America and say, well, they're just moderate and they're not violent or whatever. But I thought you brought out a great point that the moderate Muslim, I believe your word, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, was they're just the uninformed Muslim of the Quran. Is that correct, or something to that nature?
Yes, as I said, most Muslims read the Quran and they don't understand it. I spent many years to study Islam. If I can compare this to the Dark Ages when the Bible was in Greek and it wasn't translated to the street languages. Muslims don't use, even the ones who speak Arabic, don't use the language of the Quran as a daily language. So when they read the Quran, they can read it, but they don't understand it. And yes, most Muslims are not informed of the real nature of the Quran and Islam. There are traditional Muslims, but I believe that they are more dangerous because they give the real cover for Islam and terrorism.